The blacksmith doesn't curse the fire. He understands its purpose. Consider the making of a sword. First comes mining, the violent extraction from earth, then melting, the complete breakdown of what was solid. Next, hammering, the repeated striking that seems like punishment but creates shape. Then grinding, the deliberate removal of excess. Finally tempering, returning to fire one last time to achieve perfect balance between hardness and flexibility. This is not just metalwork. This is your journey. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is the forge where ordinary men are hammered into something unbreakable, something legendary, something that outlasts time itself. Most men pray for easy paths, for comfort, for smooth roads with no resistance. They misunderstand the fundamental truth of existence. Without resistance, there is no growth. Without pressure, there is no transformation. Without fire, there is no forging. The Spartans understood this. When Persian scouts reported to King Xerxes about Spartan warriors, they described men combing their long hair before battle, seemingly unconcerned with the overwhelming odds against them. Xerxes couldn't grasp what this meant until his general explained, "These men have come to kill us." The Spartans weren't preparing for death. They were preparing to create it. This calm before chaos wasn't denial. It was acceptance of their purpose, to be the edge that cuts through whatever stands in their path. Your pain has purpose. Every loss, every betrayal, every failure, every injury, every heartbreak, these aren't random cruelties or meaningless suffering. They are precise strikes of the hammer, shaping you into something that could never be created through comfort. Think of the diamond. What creates this hardest substance on Earth? Not gentle handling, not protection from pressure, not comfortable circumstances. The diamond emerges only through crushing pressure that would destroy anything weaker. Carbon becomes diamond not despite pressure but because of it. The very force that seems destructive creates something indestructible. You are this carbon. Your pain is this pressure. What emerges is entirely up to you. The soul forge operates by laws as old as creation itself. What breaks lesser men makes you unbreakable, but only if you understand the process. Only if you step willingly into the fire rather than frantically trying to escape it. In ancient Sparta, young boys underwent the agoge, training so demanding that death was not uncommon. They slept on hard ground, trained in all weather, fought in brutal contests, and learned to endure pain that would break ordinary spirits. This wasn't cruelty, it was transformation. The forge that turned boys into the most formidable warriors the world has ever known. When asked why Spartan mothers didn't coddle their sons, one replied with 4 words that echo through centuries. So they come back carrying their shields, or carried upon them. This wasn't lack of love. It was the highest form of love, the desire to forge sons who could never be broken. Your struggles aren't punishment, they're preparation. Your hardships aren't obstacles, they're opportunities. Your pain isn't destroyer, it's creator. Most never grasp this truth. They see suffering as meaningless. They rage against difficulties. They curse the very forces that could transform them, if only they would surrender to the process instead of fighting against it. The difference between the broken and the unbreakable isn't found in what they experience. It's found in how they interpret what they experience. The broken man sees pain as enemy. The unbreakable man sees it as trainer. The broken man asks, "Why me?" The unbreakable man asks, "What am I becoming through this?" Consider the eagle. When storms approach, smaller birds seek shelter. They hide. They wait for calm to return. But the eagle flies directly toward the storm, using the violent winds to rise higher than would be possible in fair weather. The same force that grounds lesser birds elevates the eagle. The same resistance that threatens weaker creatures becomes advantage to the stronger. You are this eagle. Your storms aren't sent to ground you. They're sent to lift you. The soul forge burns hottest for those with greatest potential. The most promising steel requires the most demanding process. The sword destined for a king's hand must endure more than the simple dagger. The pain that seems unfair when compared to others' easier paths isn't punishment. It's recognition of your capacity for greatness. Spartans understood hierarchy of challenge. Their toughest training was reserved for those showing greatest promise. When a young recruit complained that training requirements were unequal, his commander responded, "We place the heaviest weight on the strongest backs." This wasn't injustice, but recognition of potential. The fire is always hottest around the metal with highest purpose. Your deepest wounds become your greatest strengths, but only when properly understood. Only when you stop seeing yourself as victim and start seeing yourself as material being shaped for extraordinary purpose. The wound that breaks the surface creates space for power to enter. The crack in armor becomes the channel for light to shine through. The broken place becomes the source of your most profound wisdom. There's strange alchemy in properly processed pain. Something that should weaken somehow strengthens. Something that should embitter somehow sweetens. Something that should destroy somehow creates. This transformation isn't automatic. It requires correct response. The same fire that refines gold destroys wood. The outcome depends not on the fire, but on what enters it. When you enter the soul forge, remember this truth. Heat reveals what's truly inside you. Pressure exposes your core essence. Easy conditions can mask weakness, but difficulty always reveals reality. This is why you must never fear the forge. If gold exists within you, fire can only make it purer. If only mud and straw exist, better to know now than to continue believing yourself gold without ever being tested. The Spartan shield wall worked because each man had absolute confidence in those beside him. This confidence came not from words or promises, but from shared experience in the forge. Men who had endured together trusted each other completely, because the fire had burned away all pretense, leaving only authentic strength. When life heats your circle, pay attention to who remains solid and who melts away. The forge doesn't just transform you, it reveals who truly belongs in your ranks. Most modern men have forgotten the necessity of forging. They seek shortcuts to strength, simulations of courage, imitations of power. But the soul knows the difference between real and counterfeit, between the man shaped by actual fire and the one who merely talks about flames. This explains why something in you has always been drawn to the difficult path. Why something deep within recognizes that the easy way creates easy men. Why your instincts pull you toward challenge even when your comfort-seeking mind resists. The soul forge works in counterintuitive ways. Rest makes you weaker. Resistance makes you stronger. Comfort makes you vulnerable. Hardship makes you resilient. Peace dulls your edge. Conflict sharpens it. These aren't philosophical ideas. They're physical laws as real as gravity. Ignore them at your peril. In Sparta, when a mother sent her son to war, she would hand him his shield with 6 words that defined their culture. With it or on it. Return victorious or return dead. But never return having abandoned your purpose. This wasn't callousness. It was clarity about what matters. About what makes human existence meaningful. About the difference between merely breathing and truly living with unshakable purpose. Your purpose comes into focus inside the soul forge. When comfort burns away, when distraction melts into ash, when non-essentials evaporate in heat, what remains is core, is essence, is the unshakable truth about who you are and why you're here. This clarity cannot be found on comfortable paths. It emerges only through fire that burns away everything that isn't your authentic self. Consider how differently material responds to heat. Paper ignites, wood burns, lead melts, iron glows but holds shape. Diamond remains unchanged even in extreme temperatures. These aren't different responses to the same condition. They're revelations of different essential natures. You discover the truth about yourself not during easy seasons, but during your hottest trials. Not during comfort, but during crushing pressure. Not during peace, but during warfare of body, mind, and spirit. What have your trials revealed about you? What has the soul forge shown you about your essential nature? If you've discovered weakness, don't despair. The forging isn't finished. If you've discovered surprising strength, don't grow proud. Stronger metals require higher heat and next stage of refining. The deepest truth about pain is this: it's never neutral. It either destroys or transforms, weakens or strengthens, diminishes or enlarges. The outcome depends not on the intensity of suffering, but on your response to it. Same fire that refines one man consumes another. Same pressure that creates diamond crushes weaker substance to dust. Same challenge that awakens greatness in one, triggers surrender in another. Spartans built their entire society around this understanding. Their famous saying, "Come back with your shield or on it," wasn't just military instruction. It was recognition that circumstances reveal character rather than creating it. That pressure doesn't determine outcome, but merely exposes what already exists within. That fire doesn't decide what emerges from forge. The essential nature of material determines that. Your essential nature is revealed through how you handle the hammer blows, through how you respond when life strikes hard enough to shatter ordinary men, through how you carry yourself when the weight seems impossible to bear. These moments don't define you. They reveal you. They don't create your character. They expose it. The soul forge operates through paradox, through mysteries that confound ordinary understanding. The way up is down. Surrender brings victory. Wounding creates healing. Loss produces gain. Death generates life. These aren't poetic metaphors, but practical descriptions of how transformation actually works. The caterpillar doesn't gradually improve into butterfly. It completely dissolves inside chrysalis, before reforming into entirely new creature. Real transformation follows this same pattern. Complete breakdown for breakthrough. Consider calluses. What creates these tough spots on otherwise soft skin? Friction, pressure, rubbing against resistance. The very things most people avoid become the source of new strength. The body's response to difficulty isn't to remain vulnerable, but to build protection precisely where challenge occurs. Your soul follows identical pattern. Your strongest points aren't random. They've been calloused through contact with life's abrasive edges. Most never understand the gift hidden within suffering. They see only the pain, not the potential. Only the breaking, not the remaking. Only the fire, not the forging. They fight against the very process that could transform them from fragile to unbreakable, from temporary to timeless, from ordinary to extraordinary. The Spartan approach to pain wasn't stoic denial, but strategic utilization. They didn't pretend suffering didn't affect them. They incorporated it into their transformation. When young warriors completed particularly brutal training, they weren't merely congratulated. They were told, "Now you're harder to kill." This wasn't celebration of pain itself, but recognition of its purifying effect, its capacity to burn away weakness and leave only what's essential. Your relationship with pain determines your capacity for greatness. Not how much you suffer, not how intense your trials, but how you process what happens to you, whether you use difficulty as excuse for weakness or forge for strength, whether you allow suffering to embitter you or enlighten you, whether you emerge from fire consumed or purified. The Soul Forge connects you to every great man who came before you, every hero, every warrior, every champion, every builder of civilizations, every creator of beauty that outlasts its maker. None traveled easy paths. None avoided the flame. None escaped the hammer. What separates them from forgotten masses isn't absence of suffering, but response to it. Not what happened to them, but what they created from what happened to them. In Sparta, young warriors about to face first battle were told by veterans, "The same fire that threatens to destroy you will instead reveal you, if you allow it." This wasn't empty encouragement, but practical instruction. Recognition that battlefields don't just take life, they reveal it in its most essential form. Strip away pretense. Burn off falsehood. Leave only core truth about who a man actually is beneath social masks and comfortable illusions. Your core truth emerges only through testing, through trial, through encounter with resistance strong enough to break anyone not meant for greatness. Gold proven in fire can never again be questioned. Man proven through suffering needs no further credentials. The tested soul carries authority that the untested can never possess. Consider the mountain spring. What gives its water such sweetness, such clarity, such purity? Not gentle journey, but difficult one. Water that pushes through rock, that filters through multiple layers of earth, that takes hardest path from heights to depths. This water arrives cleaner than any other. The resistance that seems to block its path actually purifies it. The obstacles become the filtration system. The difficulties create the quality. Your obstacles serve identical purpose. They aren't blocking your path. They're purifying your progress. They don't prevent your growth. They ensure that when you arrive with quality that couldn't be developed any other way. Without resistance, water remains muddy. Without challenges, character remains untested. Without pressure, potential remains unrealized. The Soul Forge burns hottest when purpose requires it. When destiny demands more than ordinary strength. When calling exceeds what comfortable journey could produce. The fire isn't random. The hammer strikes aren't casual. The pressure isn't meaningless. They're precisely calibrated to create exactly what's needed for the mission that awaits you. Spartans trained differently than other warriors because their purpose demanded it. When asked why Spartan preparation was so much more demanding than other Greek cities, King Leonidas replied, "Because we fight while others talk." This wasn't arrogance but accuracy. Different purpose requires different forging. The sword made for display needs less tempering than sword made for battle. The man destined for greater purpose must endure greater fire. Your fire matches your future. Your trials correlate to your calling. Your suffering connects directly to your destiny. The weight that seems unfair when compared to easier burdens carried by others isn't punishment. It's preparation for weight you alone are being forged to carry. The deepest mystery of the Soul Forge is timing. The fire always burns longest when transformation is nearest completion. The pressure always feels most intense just before breakthrough occurs. The resistance always peaks right before surrender becomes victory. This explains why giving up in final stage is tragedy beyond measure. Abandoning process precisely when reward was nearest. Consider birth. When does mother experience greatest pain? Not in early stages, but final ones. When new life is closest to emerging. When transformation from within to without is nearest completion. When long journey is about to culminate in new beginning. Your rebirth through fire follows identical pattern. The agony that seems to signal defeat often announces imminent victory, but only for those who understand the process enough to persist when surrender seems only sane option. The Spartan shield was designed to protect not just the individual warrior, but the man beside him. This created accountability beyond self-preservation. To throw down shield meant endangering brother in arms. When asked why this weight couldn't be lightened, Spartan commanders had simple answer: because purpose outweighs comfort. This principle applies equally to your journey through Forge. The weight feels impossible when measured against desire for ease, but becomes entirely manageable when measured against importance of purpose being forged within you. Your purpose makes suffering meaningful. Without it, pain becomes merely painful. With it, even most extreme trials become worthwhile investments in becoming who you were always meant to be. This explains why men can endure incredible hardship when connected to cause greater than themselves, but crumble under minor inconvenience when focused solely on personal comfort. Purpose doesn't just give reason to endure Forge. It transforms relationship with fire itself from enemy to ally in creation of something extraordinary. The Soul Forge isn't punishment, it's privilege. The fire doesn't burn because you deserve suffering. It burns because you deserve transformation, because something within you is worthy of extraordinary investment. Because raw material of your spirit contains potential that justifies extreme measures to extract it. In Sparta, being selected for most demanding training wasn't punishment but recognition. When particularly difficult challenges were assigned to certain warriors, Commander explained, "The heaviest weight belongs on strongest shoulders." This wasn't cruelty, but clarity about potential. About capacity for greatness visible to experienced eye even before it fully emerged in young warrior himself. Your potential often becomes visible to others before you recognize it yourself. The weight placed upon you, the challenges that seem unreasonable compared to what others carry, these aren't random burdens, but recognition of what sleeps within you. The fire isn't sent to destroy but to awaken. To activate dormant greatness that might otherwise remain forever sleeping beneath comfortable surface of unexamined existence. Consider how differently materials handle pressure. Clay hardens, coal compresses into diamond, glass shatters, wood splinters, iron becomes steel. Your response to pressure isn't determined by pressure itself, but by what you're made of, by what exists at core level of your being. By essence rather than circumstance. The finest swords ever created came from ancient Japan. The process required steel be folded over itself thousands of times. Each fold drove out impurities. Each heating and hammering increased strength. Each repetition seemed redundant, but contributed to final quality that made these weapons legendary. Your journey through Soul Forge follows identical pattern. What feels like repeated lessons, like hammer blows striking same spot, like fire that never seems to cool. These aren't punishment but perfection being created through persistence. Most abandon Forge before transformation completes. They interpret pain as punishment rather than process. They identify with suffering rather than with what suffering creates. They focus on temporary discomfort rather than permanent transformation being purchased through present fires. Don't make this cosmic mistake. Don't surrender when victory requires just one more round in flames. Don't forfeit what's being created because creation process demands more than comfort-seeking nature wants to pay. Spartans knew importance of enduring until completion. When asked how Spartan 300 could face Persian million without fear, Survivor explained, "We were already dead in our minds, already given, already surrendered to process regardless of outcome." This wasn't fatalism but freedom. Release from fear that comes when man stops calculating odds and simply commits without reservation to forge, regardless of how hot fires burn. Your commitment to forge determines outcome more than intensity of heat. The fully surrendered soul gets maximum benefit from minimum suffering. The resistant spirit requires extra heat to achieve same result. The fire isn't cruel, it's efficient. It burns exactly hot enough to create necessary transformation in willing material. Resistance only increases temperature required for same outcome. The Soul Forge asks ultimate question. What are you becoming through this? Not why is this happening? Not how can I escape this? Not when will this end? But what is being created in me that couldn't exist without precisely this fire, this pressure, this breaking down of what I was to release what I meant to be? In ancient Sparta, the final test for young warriors wasn't battle, but simple question. What has the forge revealed about you? The answer wasn't judged by words, but by evidence visible in how they carried themselves, in calm certainty that replaced youthful insecurity, in quiet confidence that required no boasting, in ready stance that needed no explanation. The soul forged through fire speaks through presence more than words. Your presence speaks similar truth. What has emerged from your time in forge? What has fire revealed about your essential nature? What has pressure exposed about your core composition? These questions aren't asked to increase suffering, but to extract meaning from it, to transform random pain into purposeful forging, to connect present fire with future strength being created through its purifying heat. The finished sword remembers every hammer blow, every folding, every grinding, every tempering, not as trauma, but as creation story, not as damage, but as development, not as wounding, but as strengthening. The memory exists not in resentment, but in appreciation for process that transformed mere metal into masterpiece that will outlast its maker. Remember your forging the same way, not as victim, but as material worthy of master craftsman's attention, not as unfortunate survivor of random suffering, but as deliberate creation being shaped for purpose that justifies every moment in fire. Your scars aren't disfigurements but distinctions, not damages, but decorations earned through journey that ordinary souls were never brave enough to attempt. The Soul Forge continues until Master Craftsman decides work is complete. Not when you think you've had enough. Not when comfort seems more attractive than continuing transformation. Not when easier path presents itself as tempting alternative to fire. The sword doesn't decide when forging ends. The metal doesn't determine when hammering stops. The creation submits to Creator's judgment about what's needed to fulfill ultimate purpose. In Sparta, training ended when transformation was complete, not when warrior thought he'd endured enough. When asked how they would know training was finished, commanders had single answer: when you are finished. This wasn't cruelty but craftsmanship, recognition that purpose determines process, not comfort or convenience or personal preference about how much fire feels fair. Your fire continues precisely as long as necessary, no more, no less. The suffering that seems endless when measured by clock reveals perfect timing when measured by transformation being created through it. Trust process, trust forge, trust fire that isn't sent to destroy you, but to reveal what ordinary conditions could never expose. The unbreakable core of who you truly are beneath layers that needed burning away. The Soul Forge answers question few dare to ask. What remains when everything burns away? When comfort evaporates? When strength fails? When resources disappear? When human help abandons? When strategies collapse? When plans disintegrate in heat of unexpected challenge? What remains then? What core essence continues standing when all external supports have melted into ash? Spartans structured entire society around answering this question. Their training systematically removed every comfort, every advantage, every external support until only internal strength remained. Until Warrior discovered what couldn't be taken because it wasn't given from outside but forged from within. Until he stood in pure essence that no circumstance could diminish because no circumstance had created it. Your essence emerges through identical process, through systematic removal of what you thought you needed, through gradual elimination of props and crutches and temporary supports that seemed essential but actually prevented discovery of unshakable core. The fire burns away, not what's precious, but what's preventing contact with what's priceless. The indestructible center that emerges only when everything burnable has been consumed. The Soul Forge reveals simple truth. You are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to become through what happens to you. Not victim of circumstances, but creator of meaning extracted from every circumstance. Not helpless object acted upon by forces beyond control, but powerful agent, transforming every force into fuel for becoming who you were always meant to be. Remember this in your current fire, in present pressure, in hammer blows that seem designed to break rather than shape. You were made for this forge, created for this transformation, destined for this fire not because you deserve punishment, but because you contain potential worthy of extraordinary process, worthy of uncommon fire, worthy of master craftsman's complete attention, focused on creating from ordinary material something that will outlast time itself.